Son, and of the Holy Spirit! Go!
Welcome to Every Screen. Today we are going to recap an evil movie called The Pope's Exorcist. In the opening scene of the movie, Father Gabriel Amorth arrives in Tropea, Italy, in 1987 on a little scooter to deal with a young man who has taken ownership of the hamlet. In contrast to other priests, at least during that period, Father Amorth is quite concerned about whether the family has first sought advice from medical professionals regarding the issue. He only performs an exorcism if the doctors are unable to assist. Amorth realizes that the possessed man in this instance most likely has psychological issues rather than a supernatural connection, but he and others around him are all contributing to the hysteria. Amorth has handled numerous cases such as this one in the past, so he is aware that a little drama and pretend play will suffice in this situation. Amorth claims to have transferred the devil's spirit into a pig, which the villagers shoot to death while feigning to perform a purification of the possessed man's soul. Amorth has few allies in the church because of his eccentric personality and peculiar exorcism methods, and the Pope, who was formerly his greatest ally, is ill. A tribunal will hear the priest's case since he carried out the exorcism without the church's approval. At this point, Sullivan, one of the younger priests, tries to persuade him that, in these advanced, scientific times, the position of an exorcist is unnecessary. Gabriel Amorth says that although he does strongly believe in science, and even directs 98% of his victims towards science and medicine, the other 2% of his cases are attributed to his belief in demons and evil. Amorth leaves the tribunal feeling no regrets, a man secure in his roles as a theologian, a lawyer, a journalist, and the head exorcist of the church. A family of 3 arrives in an old, deserted abbey in Castile, Spain, on the other side. American Julia, her adolescent daughter Amy, and her young son Henry have recently inherited the San Sebastian Abbey and are visiting to oversee the renovations. Julia's only remaining asset is this property. She lost her husband, whose family owned the abbey, a few years ago. She intends to sell it and repair it before moving back to the United States to start a new life. Her plan, however, is severely foiled when the little Henry begins acting erratically and grousels, threatening his mother and sister. Henry is exhibiting symptoms of possession, and his condition is getting worse every day. The church is notified, and Father Gabriel Amorth is dispatched to look into the situation. Henry's problems had first been attempted to be resolved by Father Escobel, a young local priest in charge of the abbey repairs, but he was just overwhelmed. Escobel was hurled aside by the demon, who had obviously penetrated far into Henry's flesh, and it demanded to speak with a certain priest. This was clearly Father Amorth, who appears to have a personal grudge against Amorth, which is why the demon is appeased by his presence. The seasoned priest discovers that this demon is far more potent than any other he has faced thus far as he engages with the possessed Henry. Father Amorth tells Escobel that demons are hierarchical creatures that can access more information the more authority they possess. This is significant because, in addition to using historical facts to afflict its victims, the demon calls Amorth by name, something that is quite unusual in all the cases he works on. First off, the little child's background is also a factor in Henry's potential possession because he was present when his father died. The father was instantly killed by being impaled in a horrific car accident that occurred 2 years ago, while the youngster and his father were traveling. Despite surviving, Henry was profoundly affected by the shock and anguish of witnessing his father in such a situation. To the concern of his mother and older sister, the youngster had not spoken for a full year prior to the family's arrival in Spain. Amorth claimed that Henry was a prime candidate for the demon because of the anguish and sorrow that were still very much present in him. Amy, the second sibling, was probably going through a similar mental struggle and agony as well, which is why the demon later in the movie also takes control of her. Conversely, the devil currently uses the priest's own vulnerabilities from their pasts against them. In his early age, Father Amorth had joined the resistance army to fight the Nazis, and he had seen his comrades die in front of his eyes. After a near-death experience with the Nazis, Amorth staged his own death in a desperate bid to escape, only to live with the crushing guilt of having survived while all of his buddies had perished in combat. But when a little red bird came down to him on the battlefield, he realized he had found his calling in life, and it gave him newfound hope. Amorth was later chosen to cure a young woman named Rosaria of her possession after rising to fame as an exorcist. Amorth did not want to assist Rosaria and gave her case to someone else since he was certain that she was mentally disturbed rather than possessed. In the end, this resulted in Rosaria taking her own life, and Amorth is constantly plagued by the guilt of failing to save the woman who was so easily saved. This may be the reason the priest continues to assist sufferers of mental illness in every manner possible in his current instances. Father Escobel could not resist his sensual cravings after falling in love with Adela, a woman who used to visit his church with her family. After engaging in personal contact with the woman, Escobel made a commitment to leave the priesthood for her but eventually was unable to follow through. Adela had been deeply hurt by this, and Escobel was likewise unable to forgive himself. Even now, he was bothered by the thought that he had betrayed God's will and broken his pledge to the woman. The demon takes advantage of these two situations, using words and hallucinations to remind Amorth and Escobel of their pasts, and frequently overwhelming them. Father Amorth concludes that calling the demon by name will be the only way to prevent it from killing Henry and causing chaos throughout the ancient abbey. Amorth explores the scene and descends into a chamber that was beneath the monastery to learn more about the monster and the location. Amorth understands that the location has a connection to one of the worst eras in the history of the Catholic Church when she notices the seal of the Spanish Inquisition and the Vatican insignia. Descending further into the crypt, Amorth and Escobel recognize the monster that has taken possession of Henry and comprehend the entire situation. They discover the decomposing remains of Friar Alonso de Ojeda, a well-known exorcist from the past, down in the crypt, which turns out to be a catacomb. It was Alonso de Ojeda who persuaded Queen Isabella that the Spanish Inquisition was necessary, leading to the horrifying torture and persecution of thousands of people in the name of religion. Now that de Ojeda's body has been discovered, Amorth discovers his journal, which claims the exorcist was possessed by a nasty demon that he was attempting to drive out. This discovery now alters the course of history, as Amorth discovers that the demon under Alonso de Ojeda's power had ordered the Spanish Inquisition, indicating that the devil, not the church, was to blame for the suffering and deaths of countless people. Asmodeus, the king of hell, was the demon that had possessed Alonso de Ojeda and is the same one currently inhabiting young Henry's body. 200 rebellious angels were cast out of heaven and flung toward earth, according to the book of Revelations. From there, they were buried as demons in hell. One such location is San Sebastian Abbey, and Asmodeus entered the mortal realm by some means after leaving hell. In the past, the Vatican Church was aware of this and even dispatched a council of priests to put an end to the demon, but Asmodeus was simply too strong. To ward off the monster, the priests had sealed the crypt and imprisoned themselves, but during renovations, one of the seals had broken. In order to gather an army of demons and assault heaven, Asmodeus planned to locate his other 199 fallen siblings. To this end, he was searching for a strong exorcist to possess. This was the rationale for Asmodeus's initial request for Amorth, since he intended to possess the priest and use him as a conduit to enter the Catholic Church. Father Amorth is prepared to get into trouble for protecting Henry and Amy, the two children who are possessed, after coming to this realization. In the end, Amorth gives Asmodeus permission to take control of him solely to enable him to depart from Henry and Amy's bodies and allow Julia to transport her now safe children out of the area. Then, Amorth strives to hold Asmodeus at bay while fighting with all of his might to end the demonic possession inside his body. Father Amorth thinks that the only way to destroy Asmodeus is to kill himself while the demon is still within his body, while an epic war between the priest and the demon is taking place inside his body. Amorth tries a few different approaches, including hanging himself, but the devil always gets in the way because it wants to use the priest's corpse to enter the church. Then, Amorth goes back to the crypt once more. This time, a menacing-looking pool of water has appeared, and it appears to be the entrance to hell. The experienced priest appears to be nearly overcome by the demon, and Father Escobel now joins him. Together, they must battle a second demon that manifests as Adela. Around that time, Escobel begins reciting prayers in Latin, a language Amorth had requested he master beforehand, and such abilities are insurmountable against the demons. Ultimately, the two priests overcome Asmodeus with the help of their prayers, a medal, and a crucifix endowed with heavenly powers. Amorth and Escobel cover the opening between the two worlds, and the king of hell is cast back into the abyss. The Pope blesses and commends the two guys for their service as they cross cross into Vatican City. They are also informed that Julia has successfully sold the property and flown back to the United States with Amy and Henry, who are both fully recovered. All of the records at San Sebastian Abbey have also been transferred to the Vatican archives. Since the church reconsecrated the soil at the monastery, devils are unable to pass through it. However, it is also made plain that there are still 199 such locations on Earth, and a demon with sufficient strength could make a comeback, much like Asmodeus did. Now that something similar has happened again, Father Amorth and Father Escobel decide to collaborate as a team of exorcists, opening the door for a potential sequel or possibly a franchise for The Pope's Exorcist. The final image of The Pope's Exorcist is an actual photo of Father Gabriel Amorth, who held the position of chief exorcist for Vatican City until his passing in 2016.